I head up the enterprise and partnerships teams here at OpusClip. OpusClip is an AI video editing platform which powers over 16 million creators and businesses and allows them to turn their long-form videos into short-form videos that they can then use to post on social media. In my role, I oversee partnerships, but also sales, customer success, and GTM engineering. So I have a ton of thoughts on how to use AI to make your partnerships and GTM motions more effective. So on our side, OpusClip has gone through a lot of growth. And so we had to scale our entire GTM team. And one of the things that we ran into was that the more people we added, the more silos were built. And so, well, you still need to hire people, contrary to some people on Twitter and what they're saying. What we found is that AI can be a really great way of breaking down these silos and making sure that everybody is in lockstep, right? And so in the past, there were a lot of moments where serendipity allowed you to learn about a project or figure out a signal from a partner or a customer. But now actually AI can make sure that these signals get surfaced continuously. And I think that is the big unlock, where it's kind of crazy to think that just a year ago, we used to rely on just chance so much. And now we actually have these AI systems which crawl the internet, crawl our calls and so forth in order to extract signals. It's a bit tricky for me to mention names of partners because the partners that we work with are very large social media platforms and they're all still ongoing. And so I don't want to jinx any of the deals that we're still working on right now, but I can share on a high level what's possible, right? So as I said already, one of the things that I found was most evident about, pre versus post AI is that before you had a lot of silos and a lot of disparate signals that never really made a lot of sense, or you just didn't know about them because there's no way a human could process all of them. And now the AI is able to take all these signals from the market, which includes call transcripts, notes, emails, internal calls has been a big unlock for us as well. And then also external signals where we scrape social media. Job postings have been really interesting as well because we actually know which tools a company uses, which can then inform which partner to bring in, or also who we're displacing in a sales deal as well. These have been the areas which I think have been the most interesting for us. And we have a whole system where we bring all these signals together and it then explains to each team member what their job right now is. That has been really transformational because instead of waking up in the morning and asking myself what am I going to do today, the AI tells me here are the top 3 things that you need to focus on based on where you left off yesterday. So I talked a little bit about breaking down silos. If you want, I can go more into that. I can also share another example, which is really interesting as well, where our team has become builders, if that's relevant. Yeah. So we had a case where one of our partners was asking for a dashboard because we are sending them a lot of leads and there's a lot of usage going on with those customers as well. And they wanted to get an idea of how their fleet is doing, right? Or how the different accounts are doing. And before that would have been a multi-month exchange between us and the product team. Now, what we actually do is we have Claude Code as well as Replit for our team members, which allows them to actually build prototypes themselves. And so something like a custom dashboard would have been something that we would have never built for a customer. It would have just taken too much time. It would be, too much work to just have this dashboard for one partner in place. But what's really interesting is that with something like a Replit or a Claude Code, you can prototype these things really, really quickly. And you can hook them up with the Mixpanel API, which is also crazy because previously nobody knew how to use an API. And now suddenly non-technical people do know how to use them. You can hook up these prototype dashboards with your actual customer data and basically expose a very selected slice of the data you have internally, externally. And in a way that is brand consistent, it really controls what the other party can see, and then it also allows them to basically give feedback, and your team can update it in real time. And I think that has been a massive unlock for us because the partner is happier, they get real time data, they actually get their requests answered within a couple days versus months of product development. And then if this hacky scrappy prototype works, what you do is you go back to your product team and they have something which is vetted by the partner versus something that is just hypothetically, coming from a user spec. Because that has been a big unlock. If you show a partner a dashboard and they can then click around in it and give live feedback, it is around 10 times more valuable than if they describe to you what the dashboard should be able to do. And that shortens your cycle, for development from these kind of tools for partners from months to days. I think, again, the big story of AI is unlocking information and data that has previously been siloed or neglected or just not visible, right? And AI is really good at pattern matching. And so we use that internally, but also externally with partners through, for example, the dashboard that I just mentioned. And what that allows us to do is, for example, to focus on the customers of that partner, which are not doing very well. So we can, for example, like now with the dashboard, point out like within, a very short amount of time, like, hey, these are the ones which are not doing well. Here's maybe where you need to pay more attention and so forth as well. And so that data was initially available to us internally, but we had to then tell the partner, and the partner had to tell whoever is the CSM on their side for that, customer. And it kind of like, you play this game of telephone, versus now this dashboard is actually available for the partner CSM or whoever is the account manager for that customer, which then makes it easier for them to execute as well. And so we basically remove a lot of friction. And I think that can be very scary, because if a lot of your job is like living off of that friction, then, this can be very intimidating. But at the same time, it makes the partner more effective, and it makes you more effective, so you can then focus on some higher level tasks. I don't think you should be like that middle layer for information as a partner manager. So on the partner side, just to wrap that up, like I think what changes in terms of your job as a partner manager is that you go from collecting insights and feedback and like running QBRs to doing more work, because that's where AI is not very good. Like, at least right now, I don't see AI as a tool that you would use to execute, for example, on a campaign, or like to draft your messages and automate your outreach and so forth. Like, I do think like there's some scalability there, but I'm very hesitant to deploy AI in a customer interaction or in a partner interaction, because I feel like there's a certain level of scrutiny you want to have there. You don't have like a lot of room for error. If your AI automated system goes off the rails, like it's not a great experience. And so I definitely want everybody to focus more on that side, like interactions with the customers, interactions with the partners versus data gathering. In terms of actual insights, we talked about this in a case study we wrote with Anthropic. When we analyzed like all of our customer calls as well as our internal calls, one thing we found was that one of our customers tried to upgrade multiple times through our chat widget inside of the platform. It's an intercom widget, which allows you to basically chat with support, and there's a bot in the beginning. And the chatbot actually did not have a workflow where it would allow you to upgrade to business. It would basically route them in circles multiple times, and this person tried to upgrade 6 times, never managed to get through. And then once they actually managed to get through to a person, they signed within a day. And so we signed this $20,000 deal in a single day once they got through to us, which was just a sign that we don't know how people want to reach out to us, and we should be able to like, find this kind of information and like these pipeline leaks quicker. And that was like a really big unlock for us, where, we have like now over $200,000 in pipeline generated from that one pipeline leak that we identified through these, call transcript analysis, because the person mentioned it on the call. And then the account executive closed the deal, was really excited how quickly the deal closed, but that information never made it to the product team, went to the CX team to fix the chatbot. So the background for this is really funny. Like, basically, we had a BDR team. We realized that the BDR team, wasn't necessarily performing at the right level that we wanted. And one of the reasons was that our customers tend to be smaller, like SMBs, creators, and so forth. And so because of that, they're not used to like an enterprise buying cycle where you talk to a BDR first. And so one of our BDRs actually realized this quicker than I did. I realized it pretty soon because I analyzed all the calls. But one of the BDRs analyzed it even faster. And so he tried to automate his job. And that was like a light bulb moment for me, where he saw where the writing was on the wall. And so he tried to automate his job. We promoted him to GTM engineer, and then just gave him a month to test out all the new tools and then come back with an assessment. We actually hired a consultant as well to work with him. And that was really, really successful, because what that allowed us to do is to basically like automate our BDR intake. So one thing we did was we now have a voice agent which calls customers where we're not 100% sure, and it qualifies them. So that was really exciting. That is a tool called VAPI that we used for that, and it basically qualifies a customer and then says yes and no at the end. That was really exciting. And then the other thing is that he analyzed like all the different sources for data that we can get. And so, we use Clay, which automatically has like hundreds of data providers built in. But another source that we found was also job descriptions and hiring profiles, because in the job description, like a customer will like map out like, here are all the tools that we use, and each one of these tools is a potential partner of yours or somebody that you might have already partnered with, and so that there's an existing relationship. And yes, you could do this with Crossbeam and other tools as well, but nothing beats customers just publicly stating like, here's our tool stack on their job descriptions. And again, this is not something we would have normally done in the past. Like, some of the companies, like the biggest ones, have hundreds of job descriptions, but it's very easy to just run a deep research now on every single one of your key accounts and ask, like, who are they using? What tools are they working with? And then, how does this map against our partner list? The voice agent is interesting because we only deploy it for customers where we're not certain if they're a good deal. And so it definitely didn't surface the top deal in company history because that deal was already like immediately routed to an account executive, right? But what happens through this voice agent is that we can talk to every single person who's reaching out to us. That's something which never happened before. Normally you would get like unqualified leads, they would call it in, you would kind of judge whether they're qualified or not, and then like disqualify them as needed. But now you can have a 5-minute conversation with every single person, and you can ask them basically, why are you reaching out right now? And why are you reaching out right now often leads to conversations around, I want to use the API, and the voice agent is smart enough to then say, why do you want to use the API? And then it would say, I need to connect it to this and this tool. Or I have this question that is not answered by your pricing page. And this kind of voice agent conversations, these kind of voice agent conversations have been incredibly helpful for us to understand what is missing on our pricing and product page, but then also who do we need to integrate with in order to complete our customers' workflows in a way that would have never been possible before. Like normally the way you approach integrations is you ask your top 10 biggest customers, like, what kind of integrations do you need? Because you don't have time to talk to everybody else. But with voice agents, you can now actually talk to everybody else, and not just in like a survey, which they like fill out haphazardly, but you can actually just call them directly and ask them straight up, and they will like give you the voice data as it is in raw transcript, and then you can analyze that with AI as well. So it's been a really interesting one, and these voice agents are very cheap. I think every conversation costs us 13 cents, and so across 100 or 1,000 conversations, that might be $130. But you didn't have 100 or 1,000 conversations that you can mine for insights and partners that you might want to work with as well. When you're getting into partnerships, the most important thing to understand is that your customers always come first, then your partners, and then your company. A lot of first-time partner managers approach it the other way around, where they first think about who do we want to partner with, then they talk to the partner, they come up with like a really cool Barney partnership, where both the partner and them say like, this is amazing, and then they go to the companies and the customers, and they just wonder like, what are these two companies actually talking about? Like, why would I want to use them together, right? And so the other way to approach this, and this is the way that I learned the hard way, is to actually talk to all your customers and map out your entire ecosystem. It's much more important to understand like, who do your current customers work with versus who does Gartner say is in the magic, top right part of the magic quadrant for your industry. Because your customers know a lot more about your industry and like your specific product than Gartner could ever. Because Gartner is like a very generic, industry assessment. I don't want to be too harsh on Gartner, but they don't know you and they don't know your circumstances as well as your customers do. And so your customers will not be much better to say like, oh, I really want to connect your tool with this tool, or I work with this services firm. Because if they work with a services firm who knows how to implement your product already, there are probably a lot more customers the services firm has that they could roll this out to as well if you just give them the right incentives and support. And so start with your customers. Do not talk to partners in the initial weeks, but just talk only to customers and understand like, who do you actually partner with? Who are you relying on for support or for an integration with our tool? And then work from there. I mean, if you're a new partner manager, obviously the first thing you should do is get the book on partnerships. No other than Will Taylor helped me edit it. He's a real thought leader in the space. And there are over 50 different interviews with partnerships leaders in there. And so I went out and interviewed like over 50 partnership leaders, sourced over 150 different sources on partnerships content because I wanted to create a guide for exactly that situation. You're new in a partnerships role. What should you do on the first day? How do you educate everybody else on partnerships in your organization? And so that's what I wrote in this book. There are a couple of things that we're thinking about with AI specifically. The first one is that AI removes the need for middle management. Middle management has been kind of a communications layer in between upper management and the people in the front line. But actually you see now that with AI, you can collapse that because patterns are visible, call transcripts can be analyzed and so forth. And so you don't actually need as much middle management anymore, which means decisions can be made much quicker because upper management's role is not collection gathering or talking to middle management, but just talking to the people who do the job and explain to them exactly what they expect from them. And so I think that will allow us to create like a much flatter organization, have less, middle management, and then also quicker decisions and better execution through, for example, us being able to build prototypes ourselves on a GTM team versus having to wait for engineering. So that's the first thing that we're seeing. In terms of where we're going as an organization, right now, I think like we we developed like a really great capability around like video editing and video clipping and so forth, right? And so it's really about like working with partners to bring that into the surfaces where customers already are. What we're seeing right now, for example, is that MCPs and APIs and so forth are like becoming much more important because the average person is able to use them. The average person is now able to like integrate your API into their own tool stack versus before they would need an engineer. I think a year ago, our API was tailored towards developers. Now it's tailored towards every single user of a tool like Cloud Code or Codex or Cowork and so forth, right? And so we've invested a lot in that. We invested a lot in the API and MCP and so forth because these kind of tools are becoming the new operating system. And so instead of downloading an app on your mobile phone, you now add an MCP connector in Claude. That is like the rough equivalent as well. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on that at the moment. It's really interesting because an MCP is really just an API with like documentation. And so it's kind of weird. It's like your API, but then you add like a bunch of instructions on like, here are all the endpoints and here's what you can do with it and so forth. So it's actually not that hard to like build. And so you're actually pretty quickly to get it out there. I think there's something really interesting which is going to happen with how do you like charge for it, because our entire per seat model that we had before is obviously now gone because you just connect the MCP connector. Maybe you charge per connection, like it's the new seat is basically how many instances are able to connect at the same time, right? But the per seat pricing is kind of gone now. It's more around usage. It's more about like the annual license fee and like additional tools that you might be able to unlock on a higher plan. But that definitely changes the way teams price. The other thing now is also, which is really interesting, is that, for example, before you might need to have a connector with Canva if you want to import assets, for example. But now Canva has a really great connector with Claude, which means if you connect with Claude, Claude can be that middle layer. And so in a way, Claude has become what used to be like a Zapier's domain or something like that, like an iPaaS, where it's the central hub for all the connectors. And so as long as a tool has an MCP connector, all of a sudden it's able to connect with every single other data source out there. There's a big trend in Silicon Valley right now around the forward deployed engineer. And the forward deployed engineer is basically a consultant which goes into the company and then explains to them how to use your technology. And it's kind of funny because if every single tech company has its own forward deployed engineer, then your entire office will at some point just be full of like forward deployed engineers all sitting next to each other and like talking to each other, and everybody represents one tool, right? And I don't think that is a sustainable path. Because you have these forward deployed engineers on staff, right? Like maybe your customers don't need them as much as you thought, whatever, right? And like you basically grow headcount massively. On the flip side of that now, you have a lot of people who are starting AI consultancies, and I think that is actually the path forward. Because if you're a small AI consultancy, you don't have the legacy overhead of a large consultancy firm or GSI, where you suddenly have, AI disrupting all your internal workflows while you're trying to disrupt your customers' workflows as well. Like there's a lot going on. Like if your ground is shifting while the customer's ground is shifting as well. Versus if you're a small consultancy, I think like you have this really, really unique advantage that you're starting from zero, which means you don't have any legacy workflows. You just go in with AI, and then you can also pick and choose all the models. You can use Claude for this, right? You can use ChatGPT for that. You can install Whisperflow. You can install Glean if you need to. You can install, Replit and another one. And so you can pick and choose what works best for that organization. And so as an organization, I would much prefer somebody who is a consultant come in versus a forward deployed engineer, unless it's like a really large implementation, which totally needs like the forward deployed engineer as well. Like that can exist as well. But I do think that for the most companies, like it makes more sense to have these consultants come in. And so I think a lot of, startups will now vie for the attention of these consultants. They will want to make sure that when you go in there, for your voice agent, and they, for example, have to choose between 11 Labs or a VAPI, that, VAPI gets chosen over 11 Labs or vice versa, right? And so I think that is like what a lot of partnerships teams will have to look out for, is how do we get the attention of these consultants?